Well, they made it interesting, but when it came down to it, took care of business, got the job done. Pitt wins, NC State 67-64 in Raleigh. Pitt goes on the road again, gets another ACC win, gets another ACC win, gets another win, does all the things that they needed to do tonight. They made it more interesting than it needed to be. It looked like it was going to be a blowout in Pitt's favor. Maybe not a blowout, but a convincing win. They were dominating this game at various points in both halves. But then they also had that sort of traditional, what's becoming all too familiar, scoring drought in both halves and allowed NC State back into the game. In the first half, they were able to overcome the scoring drought and go on an 8-0 run to finish the half with an 8-point lead at halftime. In the second half, they pretty much had to fight and claw and scratch their way through the final 4 minutes, I would say. No. NC State took a lead with 6.5 minutes to go. NC State led 5-3, 2 minutes into the game, and then they led 58-56 with 6 minutes and 29 seconds left to play, and that was it. When NC State was up 5-3, Pitt scored on a Jalen Lowe floater 20 seconds later and never relinquished the lead again until that 6:29 mark. 1 minute after that, Blake Hinson went to the basket with a strong layup, and Pitt never trailed again. But it was close. 65-64 with 10 seconds left to play. And the Panthers held on. The Panthers won. And it goes down as a good win. It's a quad 2 win right now. NC State, as of this morning, I think it was like just outside the top 75 in the net rankings. So on the road, that's a quad 2 win. But it's a good win. Good win. It's an important win. They're 15-8 overall. They're now 6-6 in the ACC, and they've won 5 out of their last 6 games after losing 4 out of 5 to start the conference schedule. I'm going to just say to start the conference schedule. Forget about that Clemson, random orphan Clemson game back in like December or November, whenever that was. They lost 4 out of 5 to open the conference schedule. They have won 5 of 6 since then. And they're not playing 40 full minutes of consistently great basketball, but they're playing enough good minutes throughout those 40 to get a win. And we've seen scoring droughts and rough first halves in each of the last few games, the wins and the losses. But they've been pretty good in the second half. They've been pretty strong in the second half, pretty much over this stretch. Tonight, I was just kind of bringing up the stats here to see what Pitt did in the second half. This was probably the worst second half they've had in this stretch, other than the free throw line. They shot 8 of 24, 1 of 12 from 3 in the second half. Only scored 29 points, but they were 12 of 14 from the free throw line. It's pretty notable. I mean, they scored 29 points. 12 of those 29 came from the free throw line. Jalen Lowe, a perfect 5 of 5 in the second half. Bub Carrington, a perfect 4 of 4 in the second half. Ishmael Leggett, a perfect 2 of 2. The only misses coming from Fede Federico, understandably and expectedly. And Blake Hinson, who went 1 of 2 in kind of an important spot. Minute 59 to go, Pitt up 62-60, a chance to make it a 2-possession game. If he makes both, he only makes 1. But they really didn't. I mean, this was the worst offensive second half we've seen in this, last run of 6 games. Even the Miami game, they played really well in the second half. And certainly the 4 games that they won prior to tonight, they played really well in the second half. But here they were, not playing their best game offensively, but they did a good job defensively, for the most part against NC State. Although, just kind of looking at NC State's second half box, they did shoot 48% from the field, 28.6% from 3. DJ Burns, 10 points. DJ Horn, 13 points in the second half. But Pitt found a way to hold on. They found a way to hold on. They found a way to win. And they got a good win. And so we're going to talk about it here on the live Panther-Lair post-game show. We're doing this as opposed to our usual Wednesday night live stream. We're doing the post-game show here because we tend to do post-game shows after every road game is sort of the way we've been doing it. And this just sort of lined up with our Wednesday night live stream and then the post-game show. So I said, all right, let's just do it like that. So we're going to talk for the next 40, 45 minutes or so about this game. Get your comments and questions in the chat screen over there. Already a lot of people rolling in with comments and questions about this game. We'll get to as many comments as we can and questions as well. If you want to make sure that your comment gets read or your question gets answered, you could be a super chatter like Michael B, who got us started, I think, before we even went live as a super chatter. And Michael B, we appreciate you. He says, Chris, are you kidding me? What a great win against another quality team on the road. Lowe has matured so much in a short amount of time. Fetty played pretty decent. Is Pitt playing its way back into NCAA tournament contention? Couple things in there. Jalen Lowe, high scorer for Pitt tonight, 20 points on 7 of 12 shooting, 5 of 5 from the free throw line. He had 3 rebounds, 2 assists. He did have 4 turnovers, which are becoming a little bit of an issue, something to keep an eye on with him. Federico, 4 points, 10 rebounds, and 2 blocks. It was a little bit of all or nothing with Federico, I felt like, tonight. He had moments where he played solid defense. He had the 2 blocks. He every now and then he would kind of make things at least a little bit difficult for Roselle Nix or for DJ Burns. But then he also just got taken to school by that guy. I think if DJ Burns had any kind of conditioning whatsoever, how many minutes did he end up playing in this game? Burns was obviously in and out off the bench a lot. He played 21 minutes. If he had any kind of conditioning to get closer to 30 minutes, he might have, he scored, I think he had 19 in this game. He could have scored like 30. There was no stopping him. When Pitt doubled him, they couldn't stop him. He would still score, or he would pass well out of it and get more buckets for NC State. And when they didn't double, he just walked right to the rim. There was no contest. But I will say this for Federico. All right. He had arguably the game-winning bucket. Really, actually, it was. It was the game-winning bucket. It's 63-62. They're in a situation. So 63-62 with a minute 44 left to go. DJ Horn made both of his free throws, both ends of a 1-and-1 on a foul on Federico. They go down to the other end. Jalen Lowe misses a floater. Ball comes back down. DJ Burns misses on an attack. He comes back in. NC State calls the timeout, gets Burns back in. Burns goes to the basket, misses. Blake Hinson gets a rebound. Pitt calls a timeout. And the play that they run out of the timeout, Bub Carrington gets an opportunity to drive to his left. He goes to the basket. It probably wasn't what I would have said they should do, but that's what they had an opportunity to do. He goes to the basket, he misses, but Federico gets the offensive rebound and puts it back up and puts it in to make the score 65-62. A huge bucket that ultimately was the game winner because NC State ended with 64 points. So Federico's basket to get to 65 was the one that put Pitt ahead for good, or kept them ahead of anything that NC State was able to do over the remaining 33 seconds that were left in the game. And so credit to Federico there. I think, what you saw was a very, very strong center against a center who's not very strong. And that very, very strong center really just took advantage of the situation all night. I will say this. I'm looking forward to seeing NC State at the Peterson Event Center in the final, regular season game when the Wolfpack come, because just to witness DJ Burns in person, not necessarily to see him, how good he may or may not be at basketball, but just somebody that big who can move like he can. I'm kind of looking forward to seeing that. But Michael B., to your final question, is Pitt playing its way back into NCAA tournament contention? I will say this. They are playing, by the way they're playing, they're keeping themselves in the conversation for getting back into NCAA tournament contention. I don't think they're there yet. I don't think they're going to show up as a next 4 out or the next 4 out or anything like that for Joe Lunardi. It's probably going to take another couple of weeks of winning. If they go and win at Virginia, then you might start having that conversation. You might start seeing their name pop up a little bit. Now, that's going to be a huge challenge. But then they get Louisville at home. And so if they could pull off Virginia on the road and Louisville at home, that would be winning, 7 out of 8? They would now be 17-8. They'd be 8-6 in the ACC. There might start being that conversation. You might start seeing them pop into that, next 4 in or whatever Lunardi calls it. but every time they win, they keep themselves in the conversation of teams that could play themselves into contention. I still think it's an uphill climb. I still think they have a lot of work to do. I still think they have to keep going. You know what I mean? They still think they have to, I mean, they've got to keep winning, obviously, is what it ultimately comes down to. But last year's team went on a bit of a run in January, February as well. I think they might have won like 8 in a row or something like that. So, that's... we saw last year's team do it, and that was where they really solidified themselves as an NCAA tournament team. This year's team has a chance to do the same thing. Are they playing themselves back into tournament contention yet? They're playing to keep themselves in that conversation. That's as far as I can go right now. They've just got to keep winning. Let's get some more comments and questions in here. Any other super chatters, we'll get to you right off the bat as soon as you do. Let's see. Tommy Graham says that Michael B sounds too surprised about Pitt getting the win. And Tommy Graham's, if you don't know Michael B, he is surprised that they got the win. That's sort of how it goes. Josh M says, best way I can describe that game, stressful. It was, Josh, but you know what's wild is, like, for a while it wasn't. Like you go to, the first 10 minutes of the game. Pitt was dominating. Pitt was in control. At the 10:51 mark, Bob Carrington hit a layup, and Pitt was up 24-13, and they were doing everything they wanted to do. They were in control of that game. They were dominating on, I don't want to say dominating, because I feel like that overstates the situation, but they were in control on offense, and they were in control on defense. And I thought they were playing great defense. I thought they defended pretty well most of the night. I think they had some lapses, but I think they defended pretty well most of the night against everybody other than DJ Burns. But especially in the first 10 minutes, I thought they were really controlling things at that end. They were making NC State work really hard to get shots they didn't want to take in the first place. When Burns wasn't in, NC State really had no good options. The other, Middlebrooks got some, but for the most part, they were controlling what NC State was trying to do and what they were able to do. And at the other, and on offense, they were moving the ball well. They were passing. Blake Hinson was passing. He had 2 or 3 assists very early in the game. I think he might have had 2 in the first 10 minutes, 3 in the first half, something like that. And so they were passing, they were moving the ball, they were getting good shots, and they were making shots. They were picking and choosing. They weren't forcing things on offense. And then I think they fell into, for the final, I would say the next 7 minutes of the game, they fell into a bit of they fell into a big slump, and went from being up 24-13 to a 30-30 tie where they had like 2 field goals made over that stretch. And that was the problem. That led NC State back into the game, and part of the problem was they were forcing shots. They said it was said in the message boards in the game thread that Bub Carrington and Ishmael Leggett started seeming like they started hunting for shots, which is not always the best way. It can work sometimes for this team, but for the most part, it's not a way they want to live. It's not the way they want to try and, play games and win games. It's not a good recipe for this team. And that's what they did, and it was their scoring drought, which, maybe led to some lapses on defense, but, NC State didn't really go on some kind of tear. They just made a few buckets and knocked down a few shots. They made 3 threes in that stretch, and it, ended up tying the game. And then you saw sort of the same thing in the second half. You had a lot of empty possessions. You had a lot of one-and-done possessions. I'm going to bring up the offensive rebounding numbers here real quick to look at what Pitt did in the second half. They had 5 offensive rebounds, which is more than I would have expected. But I feel like there was a giant stretch in the middle where NC State was able to come back in this game, where Pitt was getting one and done possessions. They were taking threes, and some of the shots were good. They were getting some good threes, some good looks. They just couldn't knock them down. It was 52-49, and right around that 10-minute mark, and Guillermo Diaz-Graham missed a really good look at 3. Bub Carrington missed a really good look at 3, and it just fed into this scoring drought we've seen this team be prone to. It's always just a question of how they're going to break out of it and whether it's going to be too late when they do. The way they broke out of it tonight, honestly, they just started being tough. They just started toughing it out. There was, after Pitt went down 58-56, Blake Hinson was the guy who got Pitt tied again at 58. with 5:26 left to go, and it was just by muscling his way into the paint and going to the hoop. Pitt's next basket to go back up 60-58 was Ishmael Leggett driving along the baseline, fighting through seeming like 72 NC State players to get to the basket and score. After that, you had Ishmael Leggett scoring on a putback, an offensive rebound and putback. Blake Hinson gets free throws. And then came that Carrington drive with the Federico putback that ultimately won the game. They got tough. And I have to look at the shooting after that 6:30 mark where NC State took the lead. But I feel like Pitt even cut down on the 3-point attempts. So they had two more. Hinson had 2 3-point attempts right inside the 4-minute mark. But that was it. After NC State took that lead 58-56, the other 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 attempts that Pitt had in the final 6:30. So they had 9 total shots in the final 6:30. 7 out of those 9 were not 3-pointers. They were going to the hoop. They were trying to score at the basket. They were trying to draw contact. They were trying to play tough and physical and out-muscle NC State, which they ultimately were able to do. And they didn't get a ton of points out of it. Like I say, they attempted 9 shots in the final 6:30. They made 4 of them. But all 4 they made were layups or putbacks. It's a good way to win a game. It's a good way to get it done. Michael B., another super chatter, says, Chris, what's been going on with Guillermo lately? He's been a liability on the court for weeks now. Are you disappointed in his play? I resign myself to understanding and accepting that Guillermo Diaz-Graham is not going to provide much defensively excuse me, this season and maybe long term. What I need to see from him is shooting. Yeah, like to me, it's are you playing offense or are you playing defense? Like which guy do you want to go with? The guy who can play offense or the guy who can play defense? If you need a defensive assignment out there, if you feel like playing with 4 offensive players and 1 defensive guy is the way to go, then you go with Federico. If you feel like playing with 4 defensive players and 1 offensive guy, then the guy you go with is Guillermo. I feel pretty good about the defense that Bub Carrington's been playing. I think Jalen Lowe's been doing a nice job. Ishmael Leggett's a good defensive player. But Blake is Blake, right? And Zach Austin has his moments as well. But Guillermo's just not going to give you much defensively. And Federico's not going to give you much offensively. What I always say about both of those guys is, all right, Federico's not going to give you much offensively. So if his defense slips, then he is of no value. He's of no use on the court. Conversely, Guillermo is going to, he's really just out there for offense. And so if he's not hitting shots, if he can't help you that way, then he is a liability on the court. He's not helping you at all. You accept him as a defensive liability if he can knock down the open threes like the one that he got tonight right around that 10-minute mark. But if he can't hit those shots, if he's not hitting those shots, then all he's doing is he's staying on the court long enough for Federico to catch his breath. Or if you're in a game like, was it Wake Forest? And then, you just use like Will Jeffress, to play at that position. That's really what it comes down to. I mean, Federico's the main guy you go with. You bring in Guillermo when, Federico needs a breather, and you hope Guillermo can get you some points. So am I disappointed in him? I'm disappointed that his offensive game has not evolved over the course of the season, that he's not, he's got these flashes, but if his thing is going to be that he's a 7-footer who can hit threes, then he better hit threes, or else he's not really providing much usefulness. Another super chatter, the Whiskey Coach says, great W. Fetty has got to develop his offensive game because he's an absolute liability at the moment, not to mention his free throw marksmanship. I listen every day here in Northeast Ohio. Appreciate all the content, Chris. Thank you, Whiskey Coach. Appreciate you checking in and, listening all the time. We appreciate you on the morning pit and then these live shows. They're always fun to do. Certainly post-game shows are more fun to do after a win, but we always have something to talk about one way or the other. So much with Federico, not the free throw shooting, but so much with Federico, it still feels like it comes down to strength. He's not a strong rebounder. He doesn't have the strength to go up through contact and finish, and he does very little against a stronger center, like somebody like Burns. I mean, this is an extreme example tonight, but any center with strength is going to have success with him. Playing against Federico. Now, he was able to time up one or two of Burns' shots and get a block, but that wasn't strength. That was just timing and feel. And maybe that's the best that he can do right now. Maybe he can offer rim protection through instincts and feel. But if it's just strength versus strength, he loses. And he loses all the time. And I don't think there's any way to fix that. There's only so much you can do through positioning and anticipation and instincts. At some point, you just have to be strong. At some point, you have to add some muscle. And maybe he's never going to be as strong as DJ Burns. Maybe he's never going to be as strong as Will Jeffress. But he could be a little stronger than he is now. And he needs to be a little stronger than he is now. Because it's such a mismatch. And it's a liability. And the same thing goes for the rebounding, too. I mean, he ended up with 10 rebounds in this game. What was the breakdown? Offense, defense. I just want to bring that up. 10 rebounds in this game. 8 of them were defensive. So, solid performance there. That's the kind of thing you need out of him. You'd like to get some offensive rebounds, but, defense probably is where he's going to get most of his boards. But he just, a game like this puts his lack of strength on full display. And you watch it and you're like, ugh, dude, you are just getting pushed around. Let's get back into the comments and the questions in the chat. See if anybody else, any other super chatters. We'll get that. Tommy Graham says he has 50 pounds over him. What do you expect? I know, but you could be a little bit stronger than he is. Burns is an extreme example. A game like this is an extreme example of Federico against a stronger center. But he's got to be able to put up a little more resistance than he did. Particularly if he's playing someone smaller and less strong than DJ Burns. But even against Burns, which he's going to see again, I mean, he's got to be able to create a little more resistance. He's not going to be able to do it this year. But, I mean, that's got to be the goal for this offseason. Put some muscle on that dude. Chevy Troutman. I don't think it's the real Chevy, but he says, whenever butts start to get tight, just get the ball to low. Look, I'm at the point now. Yeah, absolutely. Jalen Lowe. Give it to him. Let him make plays. I'm at the point now. I feel comfortable with all four of those guys. My only issue with how they approached the final 2 minutes of this game is that they didn't get the ball to Blake Hinson more. Like, he's the guy. And it wasn't like NC State was exerting, over the top pressure to keep the ball away from Hinson. I mean, even the announcers were like, I'm shocked they haven't even looked at Blake Hinson. I mean, he needed the ball. The only reason you wouldn't put the ball in his hands is because he's not as good of a free throw shooter as Bub Carrington and Jalen Lowe. But I mean, Blake Hinson should be the guy taking shots. Coming out of that timeout, the one where Carrington drove and Federico got the putback, I thought the ball was going to go to Hinson. I think everybody expected the ball to go to Hinson. So maybe that's playing chess versus checkers, that everybody expects the ball to go to Hinson, so you don't get it to him. But that's my only issue, because I'm comfortable with all four of those guys, with Carrington, Lowe, Leggett, and Hinson, having the ball in those situations. And I mean, there's a ranking to it. There's a priority to it. And yeah, Lowe might be pretty high. I'm really pretty high on Bub Carrington's play right now. I think he's been playing at a really high level. I think he's been really reliable and solid. Did he play 40 minutes again tonight? No, he didn't. He didn't play 40. He only played 37. I'd have to look, see when that was that he came out. But regardless, I'm a big fan of how he is playing right now. And I'll put the ball in his hands in the final 2 minutes of a game where they're only up 2 or 3 points or 1 point. I'll give him the ball and let him make a play or find a play to be made. I'll do the same thing with Jalen Lowe. I don't mind if the ball ends up with Ishmael Leggett, and I certainly want the ball to go to Blake Hinson. There are four, and I wrote about this, or I think I talked about it on the Morning Pit this morning, about how those four guys have been playing over the last 4 games, where I don't even know if I still have the number. Yeah, I do have the numbers I wrote down. I mean, or the last 5 games coming into today, and they're all averaging 14, Hinson was averaging almost 18. Carrington and Leggett were averaging 14 plus each. Lowe was averaging almost 13. This is over the last 5 games prior to today. Those numbers will change based on Lowe scoring 20. But they're all just playing at a really high level, and they were all really efficient in those 5 games. Today's game will adjust some of those numbers, and we'll post that on Panther-Lair.com. But I'm comfortable with all 4 of those guys. Is that just me, or you guys comfortable with those 4 as well? Because I would probably rank them. Like, personally, I would put the ball in Carrington's hands and then Lowe. But I want the ball to go to Blake Hinson. So I think I would start off a possession with either Carrington or Lowe having the ball, get it to Blake Hinson. He's got the green light, of course, and Ish Leggett, I think I can rely on getting a rebound. I think he finished with 5 rebounds in this game, 7 rebounds. No, Leggett had 6. Carrington had 7. But let him get the rebound and then the putback. I'll take that because Leggett had 2 offensive rebounds. This is as much as Federico, as much as anybody on the team. So I'm good with any of those 4. I really am. And yeah, Lowe is absolutely one of them, but I'm good with any of them. Wolf HD says, great win for Pitt. Us fans have to remember the sky isn't falling again. If Pitt loses to Virginia next week, Pitt is back in the mix, and losing to a top 25 team on the road won't ruin you. But Kevin Gagliardi follows up. But a win would be huge. And Tommy Graham says that Chris is going to overreact. Tommy Graham is convinced that I overreact to things. I think my answer to Michael B's initial question about Pitt being back in, playing themselves back into tourney contention should be evidence that I'm not exactly overreacting to this. I think there was a consensus that if Pitt could go 1-1 on this little road trip, of going to NC State and going to Virginia, if they could win one of these 2, that would probably be that would be good. You needed, say the best way, you needed at least 1 win out of this 2-game mini road trip. And obviously, if you could win both, that would be huge. I mean, that would be that would be giant. For their NCAA tournament resume and all those things. But getting 1 was a necessity to sort of keep this going, keep this conversation happening, and keep the possibility, however slim it might be, alive. And they've got that. They got that win. And so I don't want to say that the Virginia game doesn't matter, because that's not the case. That would be Tommy Graham's. That would be sort of chronically underreacting, because every game is crucial right now. With 8 games left, they're all absolutely crucial. Everybody, I think, keeps bringing up 7-2 as a target for those 8 game, or for this 9-game run. They've already got 1 win, so you're looking at now 6-2 over the next 8. It's not going to be easy, and I can't even say that I sit here and I predict them to do it, but it's possible. They can do it. They still have things they have to figure out, still things they have to iron out. They have to get rid of the scoring droughts and all of that, but they can do it. And if they could go to Virginia and win, definitely overreact to that game, no doubt about it. I don't know if I would overreact to a loss. It probably depends on how they look, although Virginia, they are really tough at home. Really tough. And so if Pitt were to win, we would probably overreact to that one, I would say. Let's see. Homer Simpson says, great coaching for Jeff Capel to make that fall at the end of the game. We should have won by at least 10, but a win is a win. And this one is big for the resume. Oh, the foul at the end of the game, he says. Make that foul at the end of the game. Yeah, Capel had Pitt foul up 3 as the ball came across the timeline. Jalen Lowe fouled, who was it? Who shot it? 12. Who's 12? Forget 12. O'Connell. That's right. That's who it was. Jalen Lowe fouled him, and he bricked both. I mean, he missed the second one intentionally, but I think the goal was to make the first one and then miss the second one in a 3-point game. That was the objective, but O'Connell missed the first one, and so that kind of blew the whole plan. And then I think Pitt got the rebound anyway, or I don't know. It doesn't even matter. I don't know. NC State got the rebound, but regardless, that was a good, fouling up 3. That's the thing you should do. I can't remember the last time Pitt was in a situation where they were up 3, and had to foul up 3, but they did it, and they pulled it off. And, of course, they were in position to foul up 3. They were up 3 because Jalen Lowe knocked down a pair of free throws. So, shout out to him. Ed Mahoney says, great win for Pitt tonight on the road. The youngsters are growing up very quickly. Keep it going. Yeah, I think, we see it every game. Every game these guys, and sometimes it's not even like, boy, you know what, he did better this game than he did the last game. It's just a matter of, boy, he played just as well tonight as he did the last game. Or he bounced back from a rough game, or he just keeps playing at a certain level. That is growth in and of itself. The longer these guys go, I'm speaking specifically about Carrington and Lowe, the longer they go without hitting a freshman wall, like every time they have a game and they don't hit a freshman wall, I'm going to count it as improvement. I'm going to count it as growth. I'm going to count it as maturity, because it's a very real thing. You know what I mean? Hitting the freshman wall is a very real thing. And we're now into February. January, February is when that happens, when guys just, the grind and the challenge of playing these very competitive conference games night in, night out can start to wear on you a little bit. And these guys are playing a ton of minutes. Jeff Capel downplayed that last week, but I still think it's a big deal. So every time they come out and the situation's not too big for them, every time they come out and they're able to rise to the occasion, they're able to make big plays. Bub Carrington finds that drive. Even though I still would have liked the ball to go to Blake Hinson, Bub Carrington found the lane to drive and had the onions to go for it and take the shot, what ended up being a pretty good shot, even if it missed and Federico got the rebound. But he stepped up in that big spot. Jalen Lowe stepped up in a big spot. How about the inbounds there? When Lowe got fouled, or right before Lowe got fouled, NC State scored on a putback to make it 65-64 with 10 seconds left to go. Kevin Keys calls a timeout. Pitt inbounds the ball. They get it to Carrington, which I'm surprised that they were willing to let Carrington get the ball, but he doesn't just get the ball and stop and hug it. And, oh my God, no, please don't knock the ball away. I have to be really careful about a turnover. He dribbles right along the baseline and makes a pass, a dangerous pass, a risky pass to Jalen Lowe, who then ultimately is fouled. Huge play from both freshmen in that situation, because that drained time off the clock. The ball was inbounded at 9.6. The foul didn't happen until 5.7. Almost 4 seconds come off the clock in a one-possession game, a one-point game. That's a huge amount of time to drain, and it's a credit to Bub Carrington to be able to do it. And then to get the ball to Jalen Lowe, who ultimately gets fouled and then knocks down both free throws to seal the win. Huge plays from the freshman. And every time they do this, game after game, they make these big plays late. They hold on. They help the team hold on to a win. They rise to the occasion. The situation's not too big for them. Every time they do it, I think they just get stronger and stronger. Because once you've been through that situation, next time it's not so intimidating. Next time it's not so big. Next time the pressure's not quite as much. And then the next time after that. And then the next time after that. And then the next time after that. And they've been through these situations. They've been through a bunch of them just in the last 6 games. And they've been up to the task. Speaking of pressure, real quick, before we get to the comments and questions, did Pitt turn it over at all against NC State's press? I know they didn't turn it over against the press in the first half. I missed the first couple minutes of the second half, but I don't think they turned it over once against that press. And it's funny because you came out of the Notre Dame game that got interesting late, where they had some turnovers against the press late in the game. Or it was the Wake Forest. It was one of the 2 home games. And I think there was some concern, oh man, this team doesn't know how to break a press. Well, no, when they actually practice for it and they're prepared for it, which I think they were for tonight, they're pretty good about it. They're pretty good at handling it. And again, it's Carrington and it's Lowe. Those are the guys that are getting the ball up the court. And one time they got the dunk out of the Bub Carrington dunk against the press, where he got behind the press. The pass ahead came up. I think it was from Hinson or somebody, and he went in for a dunk. Good night all around. I mean, it was a good night, a good performance, a good game. Scroll through here, see what you guys are saying. Stan Reft says, I hope Virginia beats Florida State Saturday, but even if they don't, this matchup next week in Charlottesville will be between the 2 hottest teams in the ACC. Yeah, Pitt's going to go into that game having won 5 out of 6 and with a weekend off to rest. ZC717 says, well, so far it seems the Duke win may have been the turning point. 5 out of 6 now, and certainly playing themselves back into postseason consideration. Still a lot of work to do, but things are pointing up. Yeah, there's a lot of work to do, but I think you'd agree. They've done everything they needed to do to this point. That Miami game is one that got away. And I can't shake the feeling that they are going to regret those Syracuse games and maybe the Missouri game as well. Maybe the Clemson game, depending on what direction the Tigers go. When I recorded today's morning Pitt, it looked like Clemson was really slumping, and they had, 37 or something in the net rankings, and they were 4-6 in the ACC after looking so good against Pitt early. And I said, well, I really don't know what's up with them. That's when I recorded that yesterday, and then later last night, Clemson beat North Carolina. So, it's the ACC. Things are a little bit interesting. There's some tough teams out there. But they just, there are games that are going to feel like they got away. The Missouri game, within the conference, the Syracuse game, and then you could scroll down to the Syracuse game on the road or the Miami game, games that they, had an opportunity. You could even dig deep into that North Carolina game at the Peterson Event Center where Pitt, UNC was cold to start the game, and Pitt just couldn't take advantage and sort of put them away. So you can find plenty of missed opportunities, but since they lost 4 out of 5, and starting with that Duke game, that win at Cameron, they've been really, really good. All Things Sports 17 says, what I'm going to say about this game is for once free throws and defense is why we won the game instead of lost it. Yeah, Pitt ended up 18 of 20 from the free throw line. Can't argue with that. The defense, I think, slipped up a little bit in the second half. I think they were better in the first half than they were in the second half. Particularly the first 10 minutes, I thought they were really good. I think they gave up some things. But, some of it was just DJ Burns just dominating. But the free throws were huge. And, as ZC717 says, free throws were the difference. And NC State was awful at the line tonight. Not a perfect game, but a win is a win. And when you can get them, when you don't play your best, you take it. Yeah, NC State was 6 of 15 from the free throw line. 9 points left at the line for NC State. And one of those misses was the front end of the 1-and-1. So potentially 10 points left at the free throw line. This game for NC State probably feels like the Syracuse game at the Dome feels for Pitt. Of a game that you just let get away because you miss free throws. And for NC State, it might just come down to that. They miss free throws. And that costs them the game. But you know what? It's how you win games. It's how you lose games. And Pitt certainly had a loss that you could put a lot of it on free throws. Now they've got a win where free throws were, arguably the difference. And maybe not arguably. Let's see. Rob K says, why didn't Capel use number 25 to spread out their big and make him work defensively? They let Burns rest on defense. Fetty doesn't do anything to attack. 25 couldn't have been worse than Fetty. They nearly lost. I hadn't really thought about that of should they have put Guillermo in again? I think Jeff Capel was thinking almost exclusively about how they could defend DJ Burns. And Fetty wasn't great defending DJ Burns. He was better than Guillermo would have been, I think. And given that Burns was never going to play the whole game anyway, I think, trying to wear him out by getting him to chase Guillermo out to the 3-point line, I just don't know if that was, I don't know how effective that was going to be. Because they weren't going to get giant stretches of Burns anyway. He was going to play limited minutes. He played 21. He's asking for subs and stuff like that. So, and substitutions, not like hoagies. I'm sure he likes hoagies, but in that case, he was asking for substitutions. Scrolling through, see what else you guys have to say. There's a lot of comments and questions. I want to get in here, as many as we can. I Am Happy says last 8 games are going to be exciting with 4 at home. Let's go. Yeah, it's kind of weird. I was thinking about that walking out of the Peterson Event Center the other night. There's only 4 home games left. Season has flown by. Can't believe it already, 23 games into the season? You feel like you've watched this team for 23 games? I feel like I've watched this team for 23 games, but they're still growing and evolving, which is kind of cool. It's kind of fun to see them continue to grow. Robin Shoup says, great win, but they need to move the ball a bit more. Sadly, we didn't get the ball to Blake in the second half. Yeah, I don't think there's any question about it. I think if there's something Jeff Capel is going to emphasize with his team, it's ball movement and passing. Blake Hinson, he did take 6 shots in the second half. He made 1 of them. He was 0 of 4 from 3, 1 of 2 from the free throw line. He took, Hinson and Ishmael Leggett both took 6 shots. That was the most of any player, any Pitt player in the second half. He just didn't really hit many, and maybe that's part of the reason he didn't get the ball more. I agree that I thought Hinson needed to get the ball more and should have gotten the ball more. Certainly in the final 2 minutes, they needed to go to him more. He is their best player. He's their big shot maker and, clutch guy. But it just, for whatever reason, and maybe it was NC State's defense. I don't think it was, but maybe it was NC State's defense. They didn't do it as much. Didn't get it to him as much. Let's see. Homer Simpson says, yeah, Lowe's great, but Jalen Lowe is great, but sometimes I'm just screaming, pass the ball. Yeah, I mean, they got to pass. I mean, there's no question. The ball has to move. I think Lowe and Carrington in particular are still learning about how to pick and choose their spots. I think in that final, it wasn't the final possession, but 33 seconds left, they come out of the timeout. I think Carrington saw an opportunity. He saw an opening and a chance to drive to his left and try and get up and finish. And I don't have a problem with him going for that. I think at this point, in game number 23, after 22 games of the season, you can trust, I would trust, and I think Jeff Capel does trust Bub Carrington and Jalen Lowe, that if they see an opening, to take it. To trust their instincts, to be basketball players and make a play. And those guys pass a lot. They do a good job passing, but I think they are now, they're not in the apprenticeship anymore. They are full members. They are full-fledged members of this team who, if they have an opportunity to make a shot or make a play, they need to go for it. They're good enough that they should go for it. And they have been. And so I don't get too, I don't want them to take bad shots. And there were a couple of things that Jalen Lowe did where I was like, yeah, I don't know about that one. But for the most part, I think he's making good decisions about when he shoots and when he passes. I think Bub Carrington is too, about when he shoots, when he pulls up for a J, when he, tries to, drive, shoots threes, whatever. I like how those guys are playing, and I like the decisions they're making, and it's paying off because Pitt is winning, and so that sort of justifies it all, right? Let's see. Few other things we'll just kind of roll through here in the last couple minutes. All Things Sports 17 says that reminded me of a lot of the wins the last final 4 minutes. We didn't see that at the beginning of the season. John Marzullo says Ishmael Leggett has a tenacity and has had some really clutch effort buckets lately. Robin Shoup says love it when Ish goes down low and wins the rebound and scores. Homer Simpson says, I hope YouTube is cashing out a big check this month. I got like 12 ads. Sorry, man. It's monetized YouTube channel, and YouTube sort of puts in the ads when they put in the ads when they see fit. So I apologize for getting too many of those. Marcus Klingner says, do you think Papa Conti has a chance to be a day one starter next year after some of the play of the bigs recently? I don't know. I don't know. It's a great question. I don't know how he's going to fit in. I think it'll be really interesting to see because I think he's going to be more of a defensive guy as well, but maybe have a little more strength. And if he can help the rebounding, he'll be worth playing a lot. Could be a good rotation with those guys. Could be a good rotation. But as we always say, you have no idea what next year's roster is going to look like. Will Z says Virginia is not a must-win, but it would move mountains for Pitt's resume. And I don't think there's any question about that. That would be a huge win. It would be the Pitt's best win of the season right now. Well, I guess the Duke win. Let me see. Let me compare. Duke is number 21 in the net rankings as of this morning. Virginia is number 34. So, we'll see where they end up by next Tuesday. But, yeah, I think that would count as, if not Pitt's best win of the season, one of their best wins of the season. It'd be no worse than number 2. And if you can go on the road and you can beat Duke, you can go on the road and you beat Virginia, now you're building a real resume for the NCAA tournament. So they get a weekend off. They get some time to recoup and recover, get their legs back under them, whatever they need to do, and then get ready to go down to Charlottesville for what looks to be the toughest test out of the final 8 games. Might be one of their toughest challenges of the season. We say that in retrospect after how they played at Duke. But either way, it was a big win tonight. There's no question about that. Pitt knocks off NC State. It was an upset, right? Wasn't Pitt plus like 3.5 or something like that? Knocks off NC State 67-64. Panthers improved to 15-8 overall, 6-6 in the ACC. They have evened their record by winning 5 out of the last 6 games. Pretty good run for Pitt to be on. And the reward for doing a good job one day is the opportunity to do an even better job the next day. They're building. They're working. They're continuing, I think, to get better, and they're continuing to find ways to win. And what Jeff Capel always says, they are coming to understand and learning what is required to win. They showed it tonight. They did what was required to win. So we'll close it out there. We appreciate everybody who tuned in. You guys are all. Oh, John Christovich says, "Hit the bottle, Chris." No bottles tonight, John. It's a school night. Well, I'll do it on the post-game shows, but not probably not for the Virginia game next week either, because again, it's Tuesday night, man. It's a school night. We gotta be at least a little responsible here around Panther-Lair.com. Plus, I have work to do, so got to get back to work. But Dan K comes in as a super chatter. Dan K, did you have a comment? Let me see. Was there something that you said that I didn't get to, Dan? There it is. Dan says, I was at the game and the inability to defend against size was impossible to miss. Hard to be optimistic about the tournament chances, but hail to Pitt and Raleigh. Well, not all size, some size. Like some guys I think are real matchup nightmares for Federico. Others can be handled a little bit better. This was a matchup nightmare for him, and when NC State comes to Pitt in the regular season finale, that's going to be another one. You know what I mean? I don't know why DJ Burns would do anything other than what he did tonight, unless Pitt can somehow get him into foul trouble. And since defense isn't really something he's all that interested in, I don't think that's going to happen. So this was a really tough matchup for Federico. Other matchups are not quite as tough, but we know that there's a mismatch down low. Particularly if you have a good big who can move and get to the rim and finish, that's a tough matchup. But they're finding ways to work around it. They're finding ways to sort of say, okay, that's going to happen, but we can stop these other things from happening. And it's getting wins. So, kudos to Jeff Capel for coaching around that as best he can. All right, thanks so much for tuning in tonight, everybody. We really appreciate it. Appreciate you guys and the comments and the questions, all the super chatters. That's pretty great. That's a lot of fun. Tomorrow we'll be on tomorrow's Morning Pit. We're going to talk a little football, talk about Cade Bell and Pat Narduzzi, what the hire of one means for the other. And, of course, if you missed any of the interviews, the football interviews from today, you can find those right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So like this video and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You won't miss any of our video content. Then head over to the website for lots of coverage of the game, lots of good conversation. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. I'm about to go head over to the message boards right now. Pitt fans are there talking about the game. So if you enjoyed this conversation, head over there to continue it on the message boards. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Thanks so much for tuning in tonight or watching this later in the week or whenever you check it out. It was a lot of fun. Pitt wins 67-64. We will catch up with you tomorrow on the Morning Pit right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.